To learn more about earning college credits with study hall courses, go to gostudyhall.com or click the link in the description. Even though people have been having children, or not, for literally ever, even just the recent history of birth control is convoluted. The birth control pill hit the US market in 1960, even though selling contraception was still illegal in some states. And in Connecticut, even using contraceptives like the pill was illegal. You risked a minimum of 60 days in jail, a big fine, or both if you got caught. But activists have been frustrated by this law for years. And in 1961, local Planned Parenthood Executive Director Estelle Griswold and C. Lee Buxton, chair of obstetrics and gynecology at Yale, opened a clinic to test the contraception ban. And they got arrested. To no one's surprise. So the case went to the Supreme Court, and in 1965, they decided that that Connecticut law, which was from 1879 by the way, infringed on the privacy of married couples. This goes to show how complicated power sharing between the national and subnational governments can be. We have Connecticut making its own laws, but the federal government being the ultimate decider on what's constitutional or not. And the states' rights concept is having a 21st century revival, which highlights how power sharing can create challenges both for the people living in the US and the government trying its best to meet people's needs. So in this episode, we'll be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of having a federalist system where power is divided between the national government and the states, and ask, is this really a good way to organize a government? Hi, I'm Dave Jorgensen, and this is Study Hall, Power and Politics in U.S. Government. The balance between state and federal power was something that even the founders struggled with. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were once besties, but when it came down to it, Bestie Adams favored a strong federal government, while Bestie Jefferson was a champion of states' rights. And that kept them from seeing eye to eye on how they thought the country should be run, and ultimately led to the system we have today. When the US broke away from England, the founders wanted to avoid creating a unitary system of government. That's because unitary systems have one central government with all the authority, which clearly didn't work out great when we were part of the more unitary British government. Under the Articles of Confederation, we tried to have a confederation, which is when there's a very weak central government. And in our case, the states had most of the power. But the Articles created a laundry list of problems, which you can learn about in our episode breaking them down. So we moved to a federation, where there's a trade-off between the national and subnational governments. The US Constitution clearly states the roles of the federal government, and everything else is left up to the states or the people to decide. Now, it just takes a quick glance at the news to see how big the differences in state government policies can be on issues like education, abortion, and the environment. Take Florida, for example, which as of 2023 has been pushing against diversity, equity, Disney World, and inclusion programs at state colleges. This reflects the growing divide in policies between red states, where voters tend to vote for Republicans like Florida in the 2020s, and blue states, where people tend to vote for Democrats. And unlike what happened in Florida, colleges in blue states are offering more classes and degrees related to DEI than ever before. And this matters because bigger differences mean bigger challenges to our federalist system. Federalism allows our states to make different policy choices, which can create very different realities for the people living across the US. So it's worth understanding how we got here and how these challenges are being fought out between the different levels of government. Like, take abortion. In order to understand abortion law in the US, we have to know a little bit about privacy, which at least when it comes to the Constitution is kind of hard to define. But we have to start here because growing out of the Griswold case we mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court established that our right to privacy protects intimate and personal decisions, like getting an abortion. But the US Constitution didn't explicitly mention a right to privacy, so the justices who made that connection did so through something called penumbras, or when one group of rights is protected by the fact that it's similar to other rights that are protected in the Constitution. So the First, Third, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments all hint that certain things are private through guarantees of zones of privacy. And then the Ninth Amendment, which guarantees we have rights other than those listed in the Constitution, swoops in, and the 14th sometimes shows up as well. For fun. Anyway, the court interpreted all of this as meaning we have a right to privacy, which is how in the 1965 Griswold versus Connecticut case, married people nationwide got the right to contraception regardless of what their state laws said. Then, in 1973, the Supreme Court ruled in the case of Roe v. Wade. They decided that a Texas law banning abortion was unconstitutional because it infringed upon the right to privacy, which included choosing to abort a pregnancy since it's inside your own body. But they also held that the right to an abortion has to be balanced with the state's goal of protecting pregnant people's health and prenatal life. So that meant states could continue imposing some restrictions on getting an abortion even if there was a constitutional right to privacy and bodily autonomy. Then, in 2022, the Supreme Court decided in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization that there was no constitutional right to an abortion. And absent any national law, the authority to regulate abortion became entirely up to the states. States have actually always regulated abortion somewhat differently from each other, both before and after the Roe decision. But now, those differences have become drastic, ranging from a virtual total ban to being completely unrestricted. This is an example of devolution, or when power or policy authority shifts away from the central government and toward the state or local government. It makes the states more important than they've been in decades in shaping policy. So the issue of abortion shows us what can happen when we have a diverse set of policies from state to state, and how federal laws can either place limits on state laws or relax those limits, according to Supreme Court decisions. But this isn't exclusive to abortion, and having different state policies is both a pro and a con of federalism. The US is very large and very diverse. It's way too big for federal policies to reflect everyone's individual opinions. So the fact that states can have different policies that better represent the people who live there is often viewed as a big pro of federalism. Because of the 10th Amendment, states are the main authority over things that affect our everyday lives. Things like criminal justice, healthcare, education, and morality choices like gambling, prostitution, abortion, the death penalty, and more. It's the kind of stuff we tend to feel pretty strongly about. But while the hundreds of millions of people in the US can't get a hold of the president to share their personal opinions, the much smaller number of people in local districts can more easily reach their state and local representatives. I mean, technically you could call him though, right?
Hello? Dave, how did you get this number? He got my number again!
Representatives care a lot about getting reelected, so the more people who call, the more pressure is added, and that's a great way to create policy change. And having different states with different policies can actually filter up to the national level. We talked about bottom-up federalism in our episode on marijuana, where more and more states are legalizing it for personal use, which could lead to national policy change since the majority of Americans support legalization in some capacity. Federalism is what allows this kind of innovation to happen at all. States can experiment within the limits of their state laws and constitutions, and other states can copy that model if they want to, through a process called policy diffusion, like how Alaska has had a form of universal basic income since 1982, meaning they cut every resident a check once per year. The money comes from the state's mine, oil, and gas revenues, and has helped to reduce poverty by up to 20%. The diverse policies in different states also allow people to choose to live somewhere that aligns with their personal values. TIBO sorting is when people and businesses move to jurisdictions that provide the services they want or need at a tax rate they like. Want to use marijuana recreationally? States like California or Colorado await. Want to not pay sales taxes? You should check out Oregon. Do you want a bad football team? Go to Nebraska. Just kidding, go Big Red. But on the flip side, not everyone can afford to vote with their feet by moving, and federalism has just as many cons as pros. Critics argue that federalism encourages states to prioritize helping businesses over their own residents. Some states actually intentionally keep their tax rates low to attract businesses. This practice is called a race to the bottom. Like, if states underprovide public services, they can offer special benefits to people who start or grow businesses there. Retirees love Florida's lack of an individual income tax, and families often move to states or cities with better schools for their kids. States can also weaken worker protections or reduce payroll taxes to benefit their bottom line. But this compromises worker safety and pay and leads to underfunded unemployment programs. And all of this racing to the bottom leads to stark economic disparities between states, like how there are huge differences in healthcare access, cost, and quality. Federalism can also jeopardize or block federal attempts at solving issues that can affect everyone in the country. In 2010, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, attempted to make health insurance available to more people, but it was immediately met with pushback by several states, leaving over 25 million people without insurance over a decade later. Diverse opinions don't just lead to different state policies, though. They can also lead to issues with how we collectively problem solve. When it comes to sharing goods like rivers and clean air, they're shared across state lines and with indigenous communities. There's always increasing demand and a limited supply, which everyone is then competing for. One solution is interstate compacts, which allow states to coordinate with each other to achieve common goals and avoid depleting shared goods. There are around 200 existing interstate compacts that also cover things like emergency responses and and transportation. So if there's an emergency near a border, both states will usually respond. A lot of people commute around New York City, so New York and New Jersey put their differences aside to create the Port Authority, using an interstate compact to make transportation between the states easier. But it still cost me $17 to go 2 miles, so you win, you lose. Still, interstate compacts aren't perfect. Not all interstate issues are addressed by compacts, and enforcement may be lacking for some existing ones. And states have also shown a tendency to burden shift in order to force responsibility onto another state, or even the federal government. States can put stuff like power plants near windy borders so that the pollution is blown out of their jurisdiction. And unless the federal government steps in, businesses that are competing for investment might not work to reduce their pollution at all. So what it really boils down to is that federalism is a trade-off. The balance between state and federal power has been an issue since day one in the US, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. If anything, the debate about what role the states versus the federal government should play is the most intense it's been since the civil rights movement. Topics like abortion, the environment, healthcare, and education are the kinds of things we expect politicians to talk about on the debate stage, and they're what motivate us to cast our ballots come election time. So there's no better time than now to inform ourselves and do what we can to make our policies, both federal and state, reflect what we actually want. If you're enjoying Study Hall Power and Politics in U.S. Government and are interested in taking an online course and earning college credit, go to gostudyhall.com or click on the button to learn more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.